All right. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the September 26th, 2025 working group meeting. We're three-quarters of the way through the year already. Thanks for sticking around and being here each week. Um, to start off, we have a few new members on our list for this week. However, looking at our attendance list, I'm not sure I see any of those names on there. If I'm missing somebody or if there's someone who has not had the chance to introduce themselves before, please do so now.
I can jump in.
Sure, absolutely.
I joined a couple of weeks ago, but had to miss last week. I'm Elliot Steele. I'm with a company called Redbit. We do custom software and technology solutions for not-for-profits and business groups. We're working with a business out of the Durham area, a not-for-profit called Need the Feed. Um, they do micro farms, vertical farming, and food rescue for the community. And we've been engaged by them to make a 3-year plan. And one of our plans is they've partnered with multiple 4 to 5 acre small farms, and they're looking to become the robotics leader for those micro farms. So the not-for-profit wants to get into providing material supply and leadership to them. So I'm here to learn and see what I can do to help them.
Excellent. That sounds great. Thanks so much for being here, Elliot. We appreciate it.
Pleasure.
Okay, perfect. Was there anybody else who wanted the chance to say hello? No? All right. In that case, we'll move straight on into our presentation for today. So today we're joined by Noah Ray with Area XO and Invest Ottawa. And Noah's going to be giving us an update on how their pumpkin project with the with the NIO Oz went this year. So, Noah, please take it away.
Yeah, thank you. I'm just gonna share my screen. I think everybody can see that, correct? Awesome. So thank you for having me present today. Like Dan said, I'm gonna just be giving a quick recap on the year one progress we've had with the NIO Oz. For our innovation farm specifically, we're using it in a pumpkin field to handle weed management. So to begin, I'll just give a brief overview of the innovation farm at Area XO. I know I had presented to this group, I guess it would be a few months ago now, but there's always a constant influx of new members. So I'll just kind of go over quickly what we do at Area XO, maybe how you can interact with us or leverage the site. And then we'll get into more of the main programming, which is weed management in the pumpkin field. So we are a technology-rich R&D facility located in Ottawa. So we are a private facility, but if you come through our intake process, anybody from the public can interact with us or utilize the site. I'll also mention too, you're probably wondering, this figure definitely is in agriculture, but we're a multi-domain test facility. So we do defense, smart mobility, agriculture, telecom, robotics. So I know there's probably a lot of dual use people in this call, or maybe you have other portfolios. So we could definitely lean in there. This is actually from some counter drone testing we were doing with NATO on the site. And then our farming portfolio, so our innovation farm at Area XO is a proud member of the FCC Innovation Farm Network, along with probably some other people we have on the call here. So Emily, for example, Chuck from Haggerty Agrobotics are all part of this Innovation Farm Network as well. And like I mentioned, we basically just exist to help any innovator. So whether you're an SME, multinational within industry, a producer, someone from the academic field, we are just here to serve your R&D needs, your demonstration needs, anything like that. So I guess looking forward, because unfortunately this 2025 growing season is coming to an end. So for the 2026 growing season, I just want to make sure everyone in the call knows that we would welcome you to utilize our facility in the upcoming growing season. You can see here we have some images from this year, so some demos and farm days going on. We have Graham from FCC in our electric tractor. So I guess kind of just to maybe prompt some thoughts. So some things you could do, and this is not limiting, but you could attend one of our farm open houses. You could participate in a virtual focus group that we hold. You could bring a technology onto site like a robot to test and validate it. So we could do some field prep to basically support your needs or your use case. You could hold a demonstration for regulators. So one good thing about being in Ottawa is a lot of the regulatory agencies are kind of right down the road from us. So it can be a good common ground to actually bring these people into a real life environment and showcase your technology. We have a number of small plots that are conveniently divided by roadways. So if you have your permissions to do any type of biological experimentation, we're a good venue for that. Or you might just want to come in the spring and put a sensor down, integrate it with our network, and then collect data all summer. So anyone is more than welcome to do any of this, and feel free to reach out to me if any of this kind of piques your interest. Okay, but now moving into the pumpkin weed management. So we have the NIO Oz on site. So this is a commercially available and multi-purpose robotic platform geared towards low acreage. So I think its capacity is around 5 acres per day. I say multi-purpose because it kind of just depends on what implement you attach. So I know a lot of people have had success with planting. In our case, we were using it with a pretty basic cultivator. So hopefully this video is playing, but this is just it navigating down one of the paths between the rows of pumpkin plants. And basically how it works is it's GPS guided based on routines that are created typically with the user in a mobile app, but there's kind of some more um, maybe involved ways you can also do that. And then typically 6 to 8 hour battery life, and it's completely dependent, like a lot of things, on the workload and weather. So if you're obviously just navigating it around without cultivating or anything, or you kind of have a low torque application, it'll be higher. And then the opposite is true when it's working. And then Haggerty Agrobotics, which I'm sure everyone is familiar with. I think they're actually very successful this year in actually deploying a lot of these robots across our country. So some other places that have them would be Cornell, Simcoe Research Institute, Emily, Conestoga. So I personally think that's pretty cool just because they're not exactly commonplace in our industry yet. So I think to deploy 11 at different locations is quite significant. So our specific problem statement, we're working with weed management and pumpkins. So we're collaborating with a local farmer in the Ottawa area named Mel Foster from Foster Family Farms. So they do a lot of different stuff, but what Mel looks at specifically is 500 acres of horticulture. This, very like picturesque kind of stock photo is actually from their website. So they have quite a nice operation going. And then what's interesting is he produces, in my opinion, a substantial amount of pumpkins. So about 100 acres of pumpkins, which I don't think is exactly commonplace. And then kind of the issue that we're applying the robotic solution to is that they're very susceptible to weed pressure. And it's largely due to the large row spacing. So they're growing, in this case, on 90-inch rows. So especially before the pumpkins run into the rows, which is their kind of mid to late season behavior, there's just a lot of square footage where weeds can become prevalent. So I have a photo here. So this is actually taken from our field. So you can see the pumpkin plants here. But in this case, this is kind of part of our control plot. So you can see a lot of these very large weeds that are encroaching. And then later in the season, these pumpkins fully run into this row. So you can imagine how this would basically disrupt the growth. It's a bit multifaceted. So we have our typical resource competition. So obviously with something other than pumpkins growing in the soil, it's competing for the nutrients in the water. Another thing which is quite interesting is it's competition for pollination. So the pumpkin plants need pollination and able to basically bear fruit. So if you have these very dominant weeds, it's quite disruptive for the pollinators. So that puts your crop at risk of not yielding, which would obviously be an extreme detriment to a farmer. Physical interference, so that's what we're kind of seeing in this image I have here too. So basically interfering with the behavior of the pumpkins running and developing the canopy that they require. And then there's also the potential for seasonal inputs. So if the weeds get out of control, you could get into a situation where later in the season, you're spending a lot of money. Oh, and sorry, this is a typo. This should obviously say herbicides. But if you're having to allocate money towards additional herbicides or even manual labor, I know the manual labor in Mel's case has been a big factor. So he's had to have people go into the fields with basically weed whackers that have metal blades attached to them, and they could hardly cut through the weeds. So it's a pretty big problem, I would say, and has a pretty significant detriment. So in our case, the Oz robot was responsible for a 4.2 acre pumpkin field, and that did have a pre-emergence herbicide applied. So the pre-emergence herbicide was quite useful for the start of the season, but then basically the role of the Oz was to control weeds in the rows prior to the development of the canopy, which is when the canopy kind of takes over the square footage that the weeds could potentially be in. So this is an example of the robotic paths in the field. You can see there's no pathing towards the ends of the fields and here where there's an obstacle. So this was considered our control zone for our project, which I wanted to implement anyway to see if there was obviously a notable difference in the areas where the robot was servicing and in an area where the robot had not been servicing. It was deployed about 3 days per week. It was shared with another smaller field, which was more of a mixed market basket horticulture field. But it was servicing the field 3 days a week. So it would run this full routine of cultivation within the rows. And then typically the work cycle would complete the entire field in one day. We did have a lot of hot weather this summer, so I found when it was over 30 degrees Celsius, sometimes we would not be able to service the entire acreage in a single day. So the battery would deplete a bit quicker. And then just so everyone's aware, maybe you're interested in implementing one of these robots. So it basically operates from an end user smartphone app, and then you have some flexibility to accommodate the row spacing. So in the case of pumpkins, the row spacing in a sense changes as the season goes on. It gets smaller as they run. So the end user app has some good flexibility and features that allow you to kind of adjust the robotic pathing to accommodate for that, which I found quite convenient. So this is just some aerial imagery from a drone now to show some progression of the field over the summer. So June 20th was about the emergent state for the pumpkins. July 9th, you can see pretty distinctly the plants coming up. And then this growth cycle happens pretty quickly because now that we're over to July 30th, you can see that basically the entire canopy has developed, and there's no more rows. So I'll probably refer to this later, but this is essentially when the robot's job is done for the season. Just because as the rows disappear, there's nowhere basically for the robot to go. So you kind of have a very tight window where you need the robot operating very efficiently in order to get the outcome you're looking for. And then by August 21st, you can see the canopy starting to fade. So this is when the fruits would be growing. And then finally September 8th. So this is basically the majority of the canopy is gone. And I have some slightly more zoomed in pictures where you can distinctly see the pumpkins in the field at this point. Yeah, so just to kind of provide some more detail. So this was around emergence. So you can see the very small pumpkin plants in the rows. So this is the 90-inch spacing that we need to manage for weeds. A little later in the summer, in this case, the Oz was actually servicing the field as we were taking the imagery. So you can see him there between the rows. And then you can see here the canopy is starting to develop, but there's still a serviceable row. And you can even see in this image, there is some little weeds popping up. And then finally, we have the full canopy development. So this is when the field can't really be serviced by a robot anymore. And ideally, you've kind of managed the weeds and allowed the pumpkins to get to this point. a bit further down the line, so August 21st. So you can see here a section of the field is still in canopy, but this is starting to break out and you can see all the pumpkins. And then finally the near harvest, so you can see the canopies broken basically everywhere, and now we have a very high density of pumpkins growing in the field. Um, so slightly more detailed. So as far as between the rows, this is a good example of the weeds. So this is part of our control zone, and you can see these large weeds in the row. That's basically what we're trying to avoid. So theoretically, if they got too out of control, it would have a big effect. I'd say we got a little lucky with the conditions this year, and the control zones, although they did have a lot more weed pressure, still bared fruit. But I'd like to see if I can kind of quantify the difference a bit more as I take a deeper look at the data. And then if we switch over to multispectral, so you can see the same behavior here. So these are the weeds showing up. Um, and as far as their index, you can see they're quite substantial weeds. Like they have quite a high density on this plot, for example, basically rivaling the edges of the pumpkins. Okay, so then just to go through this a little more. So once again, we're kind of zoomed out again on the field. So you can see here in one of our control zones, if we look for kind of these dark gray spots, we can see kind of a higher normal density up here. Another point to look at, which is interesting, is this large patch of weeds, which is basically a bare patch on the field. So there's kind of like a cistern opening here. So this was not able to be planted and then not able to be accessed by the robot as well. So you see, obviously, if you leave some bare land like that, it gets a lot of weed pressure. And then what's kind of interesting, because this is actually in the robot's kind of area it was servicing, is these kind of lines of weeds you're seeing. So this is basically rows where the robot can't access. So if you are doing multiple passes or planter, and you have the rows intersecting to basically make very thin Y shapes, it creates a row that's not easily accessible by the robot just because there's not enough width for it to travel. So in this case, we had a few sections of rows that were not accessible, so you can clearly see the weed pressure that's kind of taking over that area. But more on the good news side of things is this is the rest of the field, so kind of the bottom half of this image and the majority of the pumpkins that we're harvesting, and you can see that there's quite, in my opinion, quite low weed pressure. We're definitely not seeing this kind of obviously visible higher density sections up here. So I'd say overall we are quite happy with the performance of the robot, and I know Mel, the farmer we were partnered with, was also quite satisfied. Okay, so just a bit of a tangent now too, just because we had a bit of an interesting situation on our farm. So since we were partnered up with the farmer, he was planting the pumpkins to his spec, and then I happened to be off site during that pumpkin planting day. So basically, we were not able to put the robot GPS beacon on the planter, which is the typical way that you would map this. So we came up with a way to basically create the robotic pass using drone imagery at emergence so you can see it. So basically what we did is you can take multispectral imagery at emergence. In your post-processing software, you can annotate the crop rows and they're tagged with the GPS. Basically, so that's like a exportable format now. And then you can just have some code to basically spoof those annotations into the robot's GPS. So it just changes the formatting. So it basically thinks you're standing in the field at those annotation points with the GPS. You can generate robot pathing from that, and then you just adjust the entire map based on some manually recorded points, which kind of just offsets the difference of the GPS between the drone and the robot. So why I'm sharing this is because I think it could be useful for other robotic users if you don't have something like this already, just because it kind of eliminates the need. Like you can still use the beacon on the planter, but if you get into a point in your season where you need to do a very large revision of your robotic pathing in a field, or I think another point I made was perhaps you're someone like Haggerty who's dealing with customers and maybe they want to try to do the robotic pathing. It doesn't go so well, so now you need to offer some support to them later in the season. I just kind of wanted to make everyone aware that this is a method you can use to generate the pathing, and it saves you from standing out in a field with a beacon for hours, like manually mapping the rows. You can also do kind of curvilinear or more complex paths with this too, so it solves that. And then another little learning experience we had this summer was we have some researchers, particularly at the University of Ottawa, that do a lot of AI development. So I kind of figured we have this robot that's just navigating around a field at a consistent interval throughout the summer and passing by all the plants. So why not just add something to it that can take pictures and basically generate data sets if you're doing any type of image-based detection? So we basically built this little kind of unit here. It just magnetically attaches to the robot. It's super simple. It just has a battery and a Raspberry Pi on it. So like in this case with a commercially available robot, it's not very open source, or you can't really interact with it outside of what the creator of the robot has intended. So it's completely non-invasive. It just operates from battery and uses these cameras to take pictures on intervals. So what I was left with at the end of the season is a lot of pictures like this, basically taken at regular intervals of the growth stage and along the field. So now we can hand this over to any researchers that want to prep any AI related capabilities for the next growing season, and then they have their initial data set to train. So in this case, they're going to be training models to identify what is just a pumpkin, because then weed-wise, no matter how many weeds are in the field, as long as it knows it's not a pumpkin, some corrective action can be taken. So once again, if anyone's interested in something like this, just let me know and I can send you like the bill of materials. Okay, and then now we're coming to the conclusion of the presentation. So I guess some summary. So, and hopefully this isn't news to Haggerty. I think I mentioned this to someone, but we would like the NIO Oz to remain with the Ottawa Innovation Farm. So we're definitely hoping to use it for next year. So I hope that isn't a surprise to any of the Haggerty members that are probably on the call. For the Oz specifically, we want to expand some of the tasks it does. So I definitely would like to try it in planting. And then I want to try and make some improvements to the weeding implements, just because I think we can improve from the basic cultivator. In terms of our pumpkin project, we're planning to upscale the robotic solution to the Nio Oreo. So it's basically just the big brother of the Oz, with the goal being actual adoption from our pumpkin farmer. So this is kind of the robot that will actually allow him to scale this solution to the acreage that he requires for his pumpkin operation. And then ideally this would service about 10 acres a day. I don't think the fields would need to be serviced daily. So I think if we could kind of like if it serviced 5 different sets of 10 acres a week, then we'd be up to 50 acres from the single robot. So that's my goal at least. But yeah, I thank everyone for listening, and I'm more than happy to answer any questions or have any discussions.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Noah. That was awesome. Really glad to hear that the project is going well and the farmer's happy.
Yeah, I
That's the
mean,
most
can't
important
can't
thing.
complain, right? Can't complain.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, were there any questions for Noah from anyone in the group?
I have one question.
Sure, go ahead, Caesar.
Yeah, well, excellent presentation and very exciting project. What you have going on, I would love to visit maybe next year, too late this year. But if I have an opportunity to go take a look and see all the great work you're doing in there, I would love to. Yeah, my question is, have you been able, now that you have all these trials, extensive trial, have you been able to do some sort of financial analysis for this equipment to compare it versus conventional management?
So I guess first of all, you're more than welcome. We'd love to have you out at the site, whether that's late this season or next season. So just let me know. We have not yet. It is in our kind of project outline or KPIs. I think basically in this case, my plan is to talk to our farmer a bit about the harvest and kind of how productive the field is compared to his other operational fields. I'm looking out my window at pumpkins right now, so he hasn't completed the harvest yet, so I'll need to wait for that info. Um, and then understanding the limitation that different growing seasons are quite different. I want to have some understanding from him about the manual labor inputs that he expects on an annual basis, say per acre, and that's what I'd like to contrast with the Oz and how financially viable it would actually be. Because it's not necessarily a cheap piece of equipment either, so there needs to be a good comparison.
Yeah, I know that can be really challenging. Actually, I was looking at a different type of equipment, and in the year they use the equipment, they had like 30% increase in yield, and I don't think you could attribute possibly all that to the machine itself, but it makes it really challenging to compare year to year. But I think what's important is at least to define the model and like what type of data and how you want to collect that data. So year after year, you collect the exact same information, and eventually you can do a solid comparison.
Yeah, I agree. I think so. We're scoping this currently as a 3-year project. So, yeah, I don't think after one season I would be comfortable attributing yield increases to it. But I think maybe after 3 years of the same information, we could draw a conclusion. I
Yeah.
guess likewise with the reduction of manual labor, but I think the reduction of manual labor is maybe like a lower hanging, well, not no pun intended, but a lower hanging fruit, to kind of quantify.
Awesome. Great job. I'm impressed.
Thank you.
Thanks, Caesar. We had a question in the chat from Dan. What is the main factor that's limiting the number of acres that can be serviced each day?
Um, that's a good question. I think in my experience, it would be battery. It would be a mixture of the typical things, battery life, and the speed of the robot. Um, Typically, I would walk him out to the field at about 8 a.m. And then usually come back and grab him around the end of the workday. So theoretically, if it was quicker, it could service more. But like I said, in certain days when it was very hot, the battery life would be the limiting factor. So it might basically die or get to the critical battery threshold around 2 to 3 p.m. Um, so improving that could further extend the work cycle.
Excellent. Any other questions for Noah? No? All right then. Well, Noah, thanks very much for the update and taking the time this morning. Really cool work that's going on there, and excited to see, especially once the Oreo takes over. Excited to see how it progresses.
Yeah, well, I look forward to hopefully giving a similar update next year and hopefully with 2 robots. But yeah, thank you for having me as always. It's always a pleasure and I appreciate all the questions.
Awesome. Okay. So with that, we'll move on through the rest of our agenda for today. So heading into the project updates, we do have a few for this week. So Bridget, I will pass it on over to you.
Awesome. Thanks, Dan. And thanks, Noah, for a great presentation. And definitely for those on the call, so the Ottawa Innovation Farm is part of that larger network, and Chelsea can maybe speak a little bit to the broader network for FCC. But part of that project was funded by Innovation Farms Ontario as well, which also receives funding from Ag Expert. So just wanted to throw that out there and mention we greatly appreciate that funding from FCC, and I know that Area Exo's team does as well, to help us do projects like that. So thank you. So speaking of Innovation Farms Ontario, our other update is the robotics competition that we had mentioned a few months ago did launch yesterday. So we have partnered with the Ontario College of Technology Educators, and there is a competition out now for high school students, and it's tailored to the Specialist High Skills Major program, which a lot of the schools are already involved in. So there's additional funding for those students if they're in that program. but you don't have to be in the specialist high skills major program to be a part of the competition. So what it is it's an open-end robotic competition where they have to find a community partner that's facing an ag tech or ag robotic challenge, work with them on essentially coming up with a problem statement and an idea of what they're going to do to fix it. And then they submit, we're going to be accepting up to 6 schools this year to do a presentation during the London Farm Show, which will be the first week in March, of their actual robotic solution. So we'll be allowing more than 6 schools to send in like proposals and their ideas and all that kind of thing. But for the pilot year this year, we'll just be picking 6 of those students to come to the show. And then we're actually going to have like a dirt box, essentially, for lack of a better term, where they can actually trial out their robotic solution at the show. And one of them will be selected as the winner for this year. So we're pretty excited about that. I know the teachers are really excited about it. We've already had some interest from schools. So look forward to having more information for the group as that progresses. Dan, I think that was it. I'll turn it back to you.
Sure, yeah. I didn't know if you want to touch on the judges.
Oh, yes. So as part of that, we are looking for people that would be interested in being judges for 2 different parts of it. So the first part would be the initial judging, which will be taking place December to January. And so that will be with the projects that we're receiving, looking through and seeing which problems and original, like initial plans that the students submit are like the ones that we want to focus on for this year. And there is already created a judging like criteria and all that. So if anyone is like, well, I'm not sure if I want to commit to this or I'm interested, I can send that to you, or it's also available on the Innovation Farms website, which I'll post once we're done here. And then the second part of that was we're actually looking for judges day of. So that would be with the 6 schools that are selected as the successful ones to move to the farm show, being there day of and actually judging the competition in person during the show. And I will mention the competition is just taking place on the Thursday of the farm show, which would be, I believe it is March 5th. Yes, so Thursday, March 5th. But we will also be doing some other engagements around ag robotics at the show. So on the Wednesday, we'll be having the opportunity for ag tech companies to come in for just a day and have a booth space that they apply for, but they don't have a large fee to be a part of, just to kind of get their foot in the door at the show. And that will be an ag tech specific space where Dan and Haggerty Ag Robotics will be set up. The Thursday will be the student competition. And then on the Friday, we're going to do the same thing as we did last year, host the working group meeting from the show. But this year we're actually going to have it on the show floor in that area. So we've kind of made like an ag robotics zone at the show this year, just to try to get more eyeballs on the different projects, and also the companies that are on the group and on the call every single week, but our producer audience may not always be seeing them. So I will put that link in the chat, but if you have any questions in the meantime, feel free to reach out to us.
Awesome. Thanks, Bridget.
Thanks, Dan.
Excellent. So yeah, we'll head into the roundtable section of our meeting now. I'll actually start it off. There was a question for Noah that came in the chat that just missed at the last minute there. When bringing robotics into farming, what business model do you see as the most viable for adoption? Leasing, selling, or a hybrid approach? And how do you envision handling ongoing maintenance and support, given that downtime can be very costly in agriculture?
Yeah, I actually, this is a fabulous question. So I think currently, with it being slightly more emerging, kind of the premise of what we're trying to do at the Innovation Farms is kind of allow for a phased approach where theoretically a farmer can kind of see it operating in their environment, but initially under our control. So in our case, Mel planted the pumpkins to his spec, but in one of our fields. And then we're able to demonstrate that. I think initially this is a good option because it increases the trust the farmer has. And then I think it also preps the suppliers of the robots to deal with the maintenance and support calls that are inevitable down the line. And I think that's really important because if they don't get over that curve or have that expectation prior to deploying it at a large scale, then I don't think they'll be able to offer the support that's required. Um, I think down the road, and maybe just from personal experience, I know personally sometimes when I'm buying sensors or other things in the defense industry, I really like the lease to own model. I think that would be really good for robots as well because it still keeps the money flowing for the provider, but I think it gives the farmer a reasonable out if they don't think it's for them. I would be concerned that perhaps if they were to say finally, okay, I'll buy one, and then they kind of get the wrong option or they don't like it, if they're fully kind of stuck with that robot, they might be very pervasive in the future. Whereas if they are thinking, oh, okay, I just leased it for a year, I think that could be more reasonable. But I'm not in the industry of selling robots necessarily, so that's just my 2 cents.
Awesome. Thanks, Noah. Um, Perfect. Yeah. So we are in the round table. So open floor if anybody has any thoughts, questions, comments, queries regarding today's presentation or anything in general. Um, Successes, challenges. No, everyone just wants me to get it over with, right? That's okay. I mean, not everybody has something every single week. We did attend the Algo then. We did on Wednesday attend the GC Expo in Ottawa. It was an excellent show. It was my first time there. I really enjoyed it. Thought it was well organized, well put together. Had a lot of really good conversations with a lot of different sorts of folks. So yeah, I quite enjoyed my time there. Anybody else who was at GC Expo have any thoughts or comments? No? No? All right. Uh, in that case, I'll run through our remaining agenda items and then sort of circle back to see if anything gets sparked. So upcoming events. Next one I've got on my list here is the Canadian Robotics Council 2025 Symposium. That's coming up October 9th in Kingston. And then there is a Robotics and AI Symposium also in Kingston the next day on the 10th. So two different events, 2 days in the same city. October 30th, the AIM Day, AgTech North, University of Waterloo. November 12th at Waterloo is the RoboHub Fall Symposium. And then coming up in November 18th, we've got the Chatham-Kent Ag Career Day. So some good events still coming up for the remainder of this year. We don't have any new funding opportunities for this week. So the last thing on the agenda is just our new articles for all the relevant news in the industry so you can stay up to date. So with that, I'll sort of circle it back to the round table again. Bridget, go ahead.
Thanks, Dan. You might have mentioned it, but I didn't see it on the agenda. I think we missed it for this week. But the Ag Enlightened is also coming up October 24th. So we'll include that in for next week. That's in out west, but it is still one of so Noah mentioned the Innovation Farm Network. That's hosted by Emily, which is the other sister site over there. So we do want to promote that event for them as well.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, thanks for catching that. I also just saw from Carrie in the chat, the Canadian Greenhouse Conference in Niagara Falls is October 8th to 9th. So I'll make sure to throw that up on the agenda for next week as well. Excellent. Was there anything else from any of our members, or are we calling it a short one for this week? Sorry, Bridget, did you just put your hand back up again, or was it? Oh, okay. Sorry, go ahead.
So I can ask one more question to the group just to see if there's interest. It's kind of relates back to the question earlier about the different types of model for like service models for robotic solutions. I'm just kind of curious with people who have been looking at different deployments or are producers on the call or just industry members. In terms of where we're going with funding and with projects in the coming years, do you think that there's value in having like an opportunity where people could see these are 2 or 3 different types of robotic solutions that are currently available for lease, and as a producer, you could apply to test out a specific trial with the same metrics across different sites. So it could be in Ottawa, it could be in Bothwell, it could be out west or Saskatchewan, Manitoba, or wherever. And if that is of interest to people, or if it's a little too broad because the variety and the different types of crops that are being used for them. So it's a pretty broad question, but I just wanted to throw it out there to see what people thought.
You've probably heard enough from me today, but I think that's a really good idea, and I think that addresses the adoption aspect basically perfectly. So
Thanks, Noah. And I know one of the other things that Kaya mentioned when she did her presentation earlier was like, we talk about ROI all the time, but we don't have a set metric for like all these different projects that are being done and how we're calculating that ROI. So it would be cool if there was, one robot in 2 or 3 different sites, or one robot that different producers could apply for depending on what it is, but we're calculating labor hours saved or battery life or whatever across those so that it's a little bit easier to look like across the board at a solution.
I can say also that is a very good idea, and this is the kind of works that we want to set up through our protocols work.
Thanks, Izmir.
We have done that this summer. Sorry to interrupt. Guillaume from VegTech. We have done this with a farmer this summer with our transplanter. So we've leased it to them instead of just selling it, so they could try it, and also it gave us the opportunity to show the technology to other producers. So for example, the farmer were planting 2 or 3 days per week. So that gave us the other day of the week to show our technology to other producer. So we were inviting them and doing some testing with other plants, other type of tray, and the leasing was definitely an easy option for the farmer, because buying new technology at first is not very well. They have to see it in action in their field, so they trust it, and then probably next year they buy it.
Awesome, that's helpful. And if you guys in the future would be interested in presenting to the group, or if you think that there's interest, I think there would be interest in the group to hear about your experiences this past summer.
Yeah, sure. It will be a pleasure to present myself and my company.
Fantastic. You can connect with Dan and he can set up a date with you.
I'll send you an email separately after the call, Guillaume.
Thank you.
Excellent, thank you. David, go ahead.
Bridget, I'm just wondering if you can give the group an update on research funds that are still available between now and April 2026 that they can use to validate technologies and or demonstrate technologies or demonstrate ROIs.
Yeah, for sure. So we do still have funds available. It's between now and the end of March. So March 31st is the cutoff. But I would say based on timing of year, like really we'd be looking for anything that could be done in the next 2 months in the fall. We do have a project going on right now with Smart Picks Robotics that's looking at Christmas trees. Or any modifications that you would be looking to do to a robotic solution in the downtime season, so like November to March, for the purposes of doing research for next year. So there is a research subcommittee. I can throw the links for all those applications in there, but there are still funds available, I think, for, I would say, a 2 or 3 month project. So if you are looking at anything, we do want to see those go to good use. So you would please apply to the committee for those.
Thanks, David. Thanks, Bridget. Caesar, go ahead.
Yeah, I was talking to a group of apple growers earlier today, and they raised an interesting point. I mentioned to them about the Acrobotics funding, and if they have an interest, there were funds still available, and most of them, they didn't even know where to start to even look for what technology is available. And I know there's a lot of effort that goes into that and the demo days. One of them in the group had gone to the demo day, and he actually mentioned that hadn't he gone there, he would never even imagine that technology existed in Ontario. So I think there's still more work we can do to increase the visibility of the technology available, and maybe we can start working on getting the Acrobotic webpage, build some portfolio of the product that we have discussed. And I don't know, something doesn't have to be overly complicated, but at least so people can go and check what deployments and what products have been developed here in Ontario.
I'm gonna jump in. I think that's a fantastic idea, Caesar. So yeah, we would be happy to throw something up and make it a little bit more available on the website in terms of the different deployments that are out currently, but also like, Conrad's presented to us a few times, like that kind of thing about different technologies that exist out there.
Yeah, I think there might be a gap between what we discussed in this group and what information actually trickles towards to growers. So it will be awesome if we can increase the visibility of the work we're doing, because it's fantastic. I know they don't always have time to participate in these spaces.
I agree. I think that's a great idea, and that's definitely something that we can look at implementing. So thank you for the suggestion, Caesar.
I'd be more than happy to help if you need me.
Excellent. Thanks so much. Conrad, go ahead. Oh, sorry, I think you're muted, Conrad. We're not, is it just me? I'm not able to hear Conrad, not sure if, yeah. He's not muted, but no sound coming through. Do you maybe want to put it down in the chat? Excellent, thanks. Sorry about that, Conrad. Not sure where the difficulty is there. While we're waiting for Conrad's comments there, anything from anybody else? No? All right, we'll wait a second to hear what Conrad's got for us.
So much pressure to type.
Yeah. Feels awkward trying to fill the silence.
Like those old school, I don't know if they do that these days now, but we used to do like the typing class in the library where they put the clipboard over your fingers so you couldn't look at them. And it was like as soon as the person came around, you were like, like that, but in a virtual setting.
Conrad was just wondering how growers here finance their robotics or what kind of project they're doing. Not sure if we have any growers on the call or if anyone has any insight to that. No? All right. Sorry, Conrad. I don't think we have any, yeah, maybe we could grab a survey on that. Yeah, no, I think that's definitely something we can take a look at just to maybe like come up with a few different based on this or some other topics, a few different individual surveys just to sort of start capturing some individual data. David, go ahead.
Yeah, this folds into what Ian McDonald and I were kind of talking about, is that there needs to be a regular assessment of what growers are using for technology. So, what did they use 10 years ago? What are they using today? What do they want to use in the future? What are other countries using? So it's not just understanding what are the barriers to adoption. It's what is actually in the field right now. How are you getting it in there? How are you financing it and all that kind of stuff? And so I really still think that that's OMAFRA's job in combination with the grower associations. And they should be asking all their members, what are you using? So you have real data on what is the current status today on what is being used, old or new, because you need to follow that over time to understand continuous improvement. If you don't measure it, you don't really understand how the province is moving. A few key players are moving and improving, but they're just really anecdotal stories. How is the whole production system in the province or the country moving? So, you could sponsor academics to do this too for you, but really, I think it centers around the growing associations because they have all the members. We should somehow facilitate the associations to ask their members specific questions on a regular basis. And then that data comes back to say, this percentage of farmers are using traditional diesel man-driven tractors. These guys are using, whatever it is, so-and-so is using GPS for mapping. So-and-so is using auto steer. So it's not what the technologies are, it's counting them. How many of them are there in our ecosystem?
Right.
Knowing where we are is how we measure how we get better.
Excellent.
Can you hear me now?
Pardon me?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Sorry, my computer died, so I got a different computer right now set up, and I guess not fully working yet. No, I was just kind of wondering about, especially with new technology, like farmers, of course, they may be concerned about, is it going to work? Is it going to be beneficial to their production? And so what would they like to do? How would they like to see this? Many of them do projects like what Agility does. They go in and showcasing what it can do, but how would they normally try and run this for a year or 2-year project to find out if it's valuable to them? What would they like to do? That was kind of the question.
All good questions. Yeah, there's a lot of information out there to learn and to dissect and to figure out. So, but yeah, like you said, David, it's an ongoing process. Okay, excellent. We've got just a couple minutes left if anybody had any last minute thoughts or comments. But if not, then I think that'll bring us to the end of our call for this week. No? All right. Well, everybody, thank you for joining this week. Noah, thank you again for taking the time and being here to present. We really appreciate all the updates. We're looking forward to having you back again in the future for more updates as the project goes on. Everybody, thanks for your questions and participation, and have a great weekend. We will see you in October.
Thanks, everyone.
Take care, everyone. Bye for now.
Have a good weekend, guys. Take care.